My name is Steve Brady. I work with the Ohio State University Extension Office in Lebanon, Ohio. So it's about an hour and a half southwest going towards Cincinnati. Work for the university, but actually I work with 4-H, if anyone knows the organization 4-H. It's very strong here in Ohio. Most of the time I'm working with teenagers, so it's kind of nice to get a different audience, an adult audience at times, because if any of you have teenagers, you kind of know some of those issues that come along with kind of those adolescent years. So it's great to be here. I love the opening keynote from Dr. Strayhorn. I think was very good. It leads right into exactly what we're going to be talking about today. I've been working for Extension for about 15 years. And it's been really good to kind of see a lot of the evolving nature of just within the organization, within Extension, within 4-H, with expansion of new audiences, with new things that 4-H is doing, kind of coming out of a very traditional view of what 4-H has been known for, of the fair and the clubs and the cows and the clothing and those kind of things, and how it's evolved into much more things now. If everyone, and I'm a very visual, kind of tactile learner myself, so that's kind of how I structure the presentations. So we'll be doing some moving around and different things during this next hour. But if everybody could just cross your arms, if you could. All right, and just notice, probably when you cross your arms, this is most of the time how you cross your arms, right? You don't even think about it. But look down and see which arm is on top. So either right over left or left over right. All right, then I want you to switch the arm that's on the top. Some people, it's like, I'm not sure how to do that. Probably feels a little bit different, even looks a little bit different on some people. All right, now I want you to put your hands like this. Just notice which thumb just automatically flopped on top. All right, now I want you to switch the thumb that's on the top. It also feels a little bit different. Well, these are just kind of very small ways of things, of habit. We're all creatures of habit. We all have ways of doing things. And what we're going to be talking about in this session is that sometimes our habits or our ways of doing things can get in the way a lot of times. And if we're not willing to change the way we look at things, to change the way we do things, it's going to keep us doing the same things over and over again, and we're not going to get different results. That's Einstein's definition of insanity, right? Keep doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results. And I don't have a flip chart paper, but if I were to draw a circle on a flip chart paper and think of it as like a pie or as like a pizza, and if you take a slice of that, and you take this pie is like all of our experience in our entire lives. You take a slice of that, and that one slice are things that we know that we know. We know how to tie our shoes, I'm assuming. We know how to get up in the morning and dress ourselves. Those are things that we know that we know. There's another slice of our life of things that we know that we don't know. I don't know how to fly an aircraft. I don't know how to dismantle a bomb. And many other things fit in that category. There's another part of our lives, all of our lives, that involve things that we don't know that we don't know. And for some of us, it's a really big area. If we're younger, for older, maybe it shrinks a little bit. But we all have that category of our lives. And that's the area that I think Dr. Strayhorn and what I'm hoping that we'll touch on very, maybe lightly, but touch on here, is that that's the area that we really have to engage in if we want to extend our profession, we want to succeed as professionals, succeed in our personal lives, if we want to bring about change in our worlds. That's the area that we have to be willing to engage in, is the place of things that we don't know that we don't know. And you can only do that if you kind of put yourself out there and you're willing to get curious, your willingness to challenge yourself by coming to conferences like this, stepping into areas that may be uncomfortable. Those are all areas that we have to kind of be willing to step into. So I'm glad that all of you are here for to kind of hopefully dive into that a little bit. So that's a little intro of what we're going to be doing. Activity that you have in front of you, all of you should have this sheet. If you don't have a bingo sheet, raise your hand. Make sure to get one to you. Has anybody played this before? Have you used this before? Okay. The rules are that you cannot sign anything on the paper. Okay. And in a minute, but not yet, we're all going to stand up, and you're going to go and mingle around the room, and you're going to find people that you may, either by asking or by hoping that they fit that category or can sign off on it. And you're going to have them sign that box. All right, and that gives you that square, just like in bingo. And bingo, of course, is, you can get diagonal or horizontal, vertical. Those are the ways that you get bingo. And of course, when you get bingo, you yell out bingo, and then we'll have the prize for the person who wins bingo. Okay, in the hopes to kind of get to know each other a little bit better. Okay, makes sense. And we do need to change. My wife pointed out, this is my wife Anka up here. She's helping me today. Who's a social worker? Did point out that maybe it's, I don't know how unrealistic or realistic it is about the 8 countries, but we can knock that down to 4 countries if. Yeah, and you can only sign a paper twice. Okay, you can't just fill up the box for one person. Okay. All right, so you can change the countries to 4. That may make it a little bit easier. Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and begin. So which one do you think I should give out first? This or this?
They don't even know what
I know they don't know what it is yet. I think I'll go with the O first.
I think the O is too.
I'm not going to do it. I need to wait till somebody wins. I was going to give her a piece of paper. She came in.
To the bingo.
Excuse me. Oh, good. She has one. Okay, good. She got one. All right, we've got a bingo. Come on up. All right, we have a winner. So let's see what you get. It's diagonal.
I have Laura and Melanie, my free space, Laura and Melanie.
All right, very good. That's good. All right, go ahead and take a seat. Sorry to interrupt your play. Do you have an O pen? Do you have an Ohio State lapel pen? Do you have one of these? Okay, there you go. You're welcome. And what's your name?
Sue.
All right, Sue is our winner. Let's congratulate Sue for a great job. It is legit. It is legit. I looked it over. And she has a nice Ohio State lapel pin with that. All right, so I just realized I'm a little bit more nervous, and I think it's because my wife is sitting. She's never actually seen me present. I do presentations all the time, but yeah, we have done some work together. I don't know, it's just a little nervous. It's kind of strange. All right, so what did you notice kind of in doing that activity just together, just in that short period of time? Anybody notice anything or observe anything about just that activity or what just happened? It was fun.
Orange is sadly lacking in this room.
The what? Orange? Yeah, I must be one with the orange maybe. Okay, what else?
Different things for different people.
Okay, so there's some differences in the room. People knew, people are kind of the characteristics.
I noticed, I don't know how, I didn't watch people, but I didn't notice people going from the very back of the room to the front of the room.
Okay, it may.
In your general area.
Yeah, in some logistics, it's kind of hard to move your way over that way too. But kind of we get comfortable sometimes in our own places. Sometimes even people have kind of, it's almost religious of where they sit when they come to a conference. Like they totally avoid the front, or they definitely sit in the back. And I've been in presentations where I've been the presenter and I've started here, but then I actually go to the other side and present from there. So it's another about difference too. So yeah, so you notice some of the physical layout and some of that too. Anything else?
People fit more than one box.
Okay, yeah. And did you notice about the energy in the room too? It kind of lifted it up a little bit too. That interaction with everyone. Kind of the energy fields, if you think about it, kind of energy being a very important part of how we interact and relate with each other. Sometimes it's very kind of just around us, but when we start to bump into people, when we start interacting with people, the energy starts spreading more collectively as a group. So that changed somewhat too. All right, so this is going to be another exercise that we're going to do. Actually, we're going to hold off for this next one. This is kind of what I'm hoping, and again, this is just an hour session, so I don't want you to necessarily expect miracles of what's going to happen, but I'm hoping it's going to touch a little bit about the hopes of what Dr. Strayhorn was talking about in the beginning of what we do in this conference. We're going to increase awareness of selective perception and how it operates on a daily basis for us. Group exercises like we just did, and hopefully examining and increasing our understanding kind of about our own personal bias and assumptions that we do have with us. And so the willingness is upon you of willingness to look at yourself in these exercises and the activities and the slides, that you're willing to kind of re-examine yourself and kind of what you bring to the table in this. All right, so we're going to come back to this. All right, so when I do this with a lot of professionals, I want to make sure that people know that these things are very important in the professional world. And these are top 10 skills for the future workplace, for what I counsel my youth on as being important, that being culturally aware, that being willing to identify biases and perceptions, those are very valuable skills that workplace places an importance on in hiring. And then number 2, social intelligence, being able to connect with people in a deep way. Number 2, the employer. This was an employer survey about what they want from their future workforce. And cross-cultural competency that Dr. Strayhorn talked about being very important, being able to operate in different cultures. And as social workers, I'm not necessarily a social worker, I've worked in social work before, but very important to be able to cross different cultural kind of identities and be able to work effectively with other people. So 2 very important parts of that. So what do you see in this slide?
Liar.
Word liar and the outline of a face. Okay, and if you didn't see the word liar, what if I turn it like this? In cursive. All right. This one? Good. And evil. Good in black. Evil in white. See that? And sometimes even our language around how we even categorize black as being, as being kind of the dark or the not so, that in and of itself is a perception that we have. What about this one? See kind of a lake scene, that's kind of what pops out to people first.
A baby.
A baby, yes. See the baby? Yeah, you see kind of the baby in the womb. Okay, here's the head, and the feet over here, kind of in that fetal position. Yeah. All right, what about this one? Frog.
Frog. A horse.
Horse.
Where's the horse?
Oh, yeah.
Turn your head that way.
It's a head. It's a horse.
Turn it this way.
Oh.
See the horse's head? So we have frog. Yeah, it's not a different picture, same picture. And here. Now, even in this, you've already displayed, whether you know it or not, cultural learning right then. So what did you learn when I showed you these few things about how to look at these pictures differently? What did you do physically that maybe you turned your head? Did I tell you to turn your head? No. You learned that from some of the previous ones. So you're learning how to look at things differently, and that's a lot about how stereotypes and biases works. Is they expect that you're going to look at things the same way. They want you to look at the things the same way. But when you can stop and say, you know what, there's probably something different that I can see in here. How do I need to turn my head, or how do I need to change differently, or maybe approach things differently, a different person to ask, in order to see something different? And sometimes all it can take is just a turn of a head before you see something different. Exactly. All right, what about this one? How many people, just read what's in the triangle, sees Paris in the spring? Raise your hand. Paris in the spring. All right. Now, who sees something different than Paris in the spring? So we got 2. Look at it again. Raise your hand if you see something different than Paris in the spring. All right, another hand's going up. Just keep your hand up if you see something different. Don't feel dumb if you don't, because I was the same way when I did this exercise too. Okay, another hand. Yeah. I know, you kind of kick yourself when you realize what. All right. You want to tell us what it says?
Paris in the spring.
Paris in the spring. I know. What? It's like, wait a minute. What? Paris in the spring. Now, why do we not? Everybody raised their hand that they just saw Paris in the spring in the beginning. Why do we see just Paris in the spring?
Self-corrected. Yeah.
Huh?
We self-corrected.
Self-corrected. The brain just automatically threw that second the out, subconsciously. Didn't even realize it was there, but it was there all along, right? And those are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words too. It's not like an entire scene kind of thing, like Where's Waldo kind of thing. Paris in the spring. All right, this is another one. I just love these. I don't know what. I want you to count the number of F's in the sentence. Simple exercise. Count the number of F's. The letter F. All right, now I'm going to call out a number, and when I get to your number, just throw up your hands, okay? All right, so how many people got 5 F's? Raise your hand. 6 F's? Raise your hand. 7? Okay. 8? Some more hands go up. And 9? More hands go up. All right, so we did have some variety. This is a pretty observant crowd, I have to say. There actually are 9 F's in this sentence. We have, I think this thing worked, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now, my guess is that most people who didn't get 9, you missed an of in there somewhere. Yeah. And why would we, who definitely, we all know what F's look like, why would we skip over an F, particularly an of? Why do you think? Any ideas? But it's true. That's for most people. What's that?
It's a small word.
It's a small word. We tend to glance over small words and just kind of lump them together.
It's a different sound.
Yeah. What's the sound? What's the visual if you were telling somebody what it sounds like? OV. So our brain processes it as an OV, not OF. So we have to take 2 steps to count that one as opposed to some of the other ones. So sometimes the brain is so quick and works so fast that we miss that. It's just like that, I counsel my youth all the time, and when they're telling kids to do something, they want them to do something, you always tell them what you want them to do, not what you don't want them to do. Because for a young child, they have to take 2 steps to figure out what not to do, because they have to first think about what to do and then do the opposite of that. So instead of, don't run, of course some say walk. Because they don't have to think of don't run. Okay, I have to run. No, I have to not run. Okay. So it's a little easier. How many have seen this? I won't show it if a lot of people have seen this before. Oh, none of you? Oh, okay. Sometimes when all right. All right, so how many passes does the team in white make? Do we need to start that over? Yeah. All right, start over. Start over. All right. Oh yeah, you know what? That's true. Can somebody turn those lights off? They're right. I think they're right behind it. I think it's just an off button there. Yeah, I pulled this one, but I guess we need to have another. We'll get really dark in here. Okay. All right. Here we go. Let's start over. So.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white get?
So you count the number of passes the team in white make. Don't say it. If you see something different, don't say anything about it. How many?
The answer is 13.
13. Very good. But
Did you see the moonwalking bear?
how many saw the moonwalking bear? We were like, what? Check it out again. See him now? There in the middle? He was there the first one. Not a bear necessarily.
That's good.
Everybody see it? Maybe you didn't see anything. So it's easy to miss something that you're not looking for. So that poses the question, like the things that we've been building up for this, the illusions, the not seeing the F, the other things, and this last kind of video, it's really easy to miss something you're really not looking for. So we have to be really intentional about looking for those things that we haven't seen before. Then something comes into vision. Have you ever bought a car or bought something before and you realize after you bought it that, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. Everybody has one of these, or the same color, or the same kind of something. It's the same kind of phenomenon. It wasn't really in your conscious until after you realize that you have one and you start looking for that in other places. So just like Dr. Strahan was talking about, we have to, in social work and in all fields really, be willing to look at places that we don't normally look, or meet people that we don't normally gravitate and naturally go towards, in order to expand kind of our own cultural competence. Because all of us, even the best person trained in diversity and cultural competence, have areas that we can expand upon, or they can expand upon. So that kind of goes for everybody. All right. So I have a picture here, and this is kind of a fable from a long time ago. I don't know exactly what the origins of this story come from, but it's kind of an Eastern parable. Kind of you think of a wise person sharing it in Asia, and in the BC era. But I'm going to read something with this, and it kind of goes along with this picture. Then we'll talk about it. A typhoon stranded a monkey on an island. In a protected place on the shore, while waiting for the raging waters to recede, he spotted a fish swimming against the current. It seemed to the monkey that the fish was struggling and needed assistance. Being kind of heart, the monkey resolved to help the fish. At considerable risk to himself, the monkey moved far out on the precarious limb of a tree, reached down and snatched the fish from the waters. Scurrying back to the safety of his shelter, he carefully laid the fish on the dry ground. For a few moments, the fish showed excitement, but soon settled into a peaceful rest. So what do you pick up from that? Just that very short little parable or little the story. What do you pick up? Yeah.
Made an assumption that the
Yeah.
needed help.
A lot of assumptions, right? Yeah. What was kind of the first assumption? Or what were some of the assumptions?
That he was struggling in the water.
Yeah, that he was struggling. That somehow by moving his body in a certain way, just like fish normally do, that was struggling. They needed help. Yeah.
That the fish was excited to be rescued and
Yeah.
relaxed and actually died.
Yeah. Instead of being excited, the fish was actually like just screaming for his life. Right? Put me back in the water. Exactly. What are the kind of assumptions?
That his was the only safe place.
Yeah. That safety for the monkey was also safety for the fish, right? And the assumption was carried forth and kind of put upon the fish. Anything else that you noticed? Yeah.
That the fish lived on land.
Right. That the fish should be and should thrive and everything else in the same environment that the monkey did. Right, exactly. And not only that, but the monkey felt that he was doing the fish a favor by bringing it to the land, right? So, this is kind of a fun story, and whether it happens or not, I don't know how many monkeys grab fish out of the water and to save them, but I think the point's kind of made that it's sometimes how often can we see ourselves or people that we know or experiences that we've been either from the monkey side or from the fish side in our work, in our personal lives, and how often we need to step outside and see the bigger picture of this too. I don't know if anyone has anything that they want to share that relates to this, or whether it's work or personal life. Feel free to do that at any time. That would help the rest of the group, and definitely encourage that. But this goes to show that, just as Dr. Strayhorn, I'm going to refer to him a lot because I think he had a lot in his speech, that we really need to get to know the people that we're working and we're serving and we're trying to help. Those environments, those different cultural backgrounds, the different places where people come from, socioeconomic, all the different strata of diversity that we've talked about and that you probably have heard of before. We need to step inside of that in order to better help people. Worldview, and I do a lot of travel, and my wife, I travel a lot. We've been to lots of places around the world, and I think a worldview kind of helps us kind of get outside of thinking that the world is just like where we are, just like where we live. And particularly given the amount of news that's coming in, the amount of talk right now in terms of immigrants and the crisis that's happening in Europe and in the Middle East, and how that affects us. But we also need to kind of get outside and think about how the world as as a global, that we're part of the world and we're part of the global solution as well as sometimes the problem. This is a map that most of us, and I know I at least, and a lot of us may have grown up with in school. This looks pretty similar. What if I told you it's totally inaccurate? What do you think's inaccurate about a map like this?
I don't think Russia's right.
What's that?
I think that the Russian Republic is wrong.
Okay, well, yeah, true. Some of the countries' borders have changed a little bit, and the wording, the names, Myanmar, Burma is going back to Burma, I think now too. Yeah.
The sizes aren't reflective of.
Yeah, size is probably one of the biggest things. Greenland, and I had to look this up, Greenland is actually an eighth of the size of South America. So South America is 8 times larger than Greenland in reality. Here's a more accurate picture of the world in terms of size. Very different in my mind. Look at Africa, absolutely huge, right? And look at Greenland, and here's South America again. Very different. Now, how do you think, if you grew up seeing a map of this, how would it be different, or how would your perceptions of the world be different if you grew up with a map like this? And even more so, how would it be if you grew up with a map that looked like this? Also accurate, just turned the other way. How would that change your view of the world? And how is it changing the view of our world by the way we look at things? I would venture to say, and does anybody have any comments on that? How would it change anything, do you think?
We tend to place more importance on things that are located at the top.
Right, top of the class. The top's kind of the most important part. So we tend to maybe look more things at the top. Or bigger. Size matters, right? So those are kind of things that we tend to place more of value on, even though we may think about that or not. It's still something in our subconscious of how we place importance. So if you had a world like this, where the U.S. is kind of on the far left, would that mean that how would we look at the world? How would we see ourselves in relation to our global neighbors? And realistically, if you look at it scientifically, what's the shape of the world? It's a globe, right? It's a sphere. And looking in space, do you see the top? Do you see north and south? It's just different ways of looking at it. So, the Earth can be turned this way. It's a way of seeing it. And that's a lot of how, and kind of I want to make this point, is the way we look at things is very important. And if we don't change the way we look at things, it gets kind of fixed, right? And then it becomes subconscious. And then we walk around like this, and like this, and like this. And it's very hard to shift seeing things like this. And I don't want to say about things, it's about people. And about cultures, and about certain groups of people, and certain classes of people. So we tend to have this more fixed view. And they've actually done some research with astronauts around contact lenses, and actually putting in contact lenses where the lens turned everything upside down. So I don't know how they did this. I guess they were walking around for ever how long with everything upside down. And they wanted to test how long it would take before the brain recognized it and turned it right back up. How long do you think that process took? I can't imagine.
2 seconds.
2 seconds? Any guesses? It's actually more like 30 to 45 days that it took for their brains to carve new pathways to change those things back right side up. So imagine if we're kind of locked in and we've kind of been steeped in a certain way of viewing things. It's not you just walk in a classroom like this and you say, oh, okay, now I see the other side. I can now change how I do things. You have to keep putting yourself back into situations where you're gaining more information, more depth of information, to where you can then begin to change how you view things, how you view people, different ideas. It's not just hearing an idea on CNN and saying, oh, okay, now I know those people, or I know how that culture works. You have to do a lot more than that in order to change kind of how you view and how you work with people maybe that takes upon that. This is just an idea. I wanted to put the size comparison in. This is how big Africa actually really is. You can put all these countries within Africa. I was kind of shocked when I first saw this too. But just all those countries. And some people classify Africa as, just Africa. Just like it's another state. So, very different. All right, give you some more examples of this. Let's kind of get our global picture again. Gender, any guesses with roughly percentage-wise, how many male, how many female? About half, 50-50. And this may be a little bit dated, about 50-50 male-female in the world. Nationality, if this was 100 people, 5 would only be from North America out of that 100. So it kind of puts our importance, I think, in proportional value, I think, sometimes. Not religion, 33 Christian, it's about a third. Language, and these are native, kind of English speaking, the native language. Five, English. I thought that was kind of amazing. Now, a lot of people speak English in addition to their native language, but only 5 language. Literacy, 17, still not able to read out of that 100 people. And you think about, 7 billion people, it's a lot of people that still can't read. Poverty rates, 48 live less than $2 a day. Still, kind of amazing. Electricity, 22 in the world still are living without electricity. That number may be a little bit lower, but still a significant portion. Technology, cell phones are being adopted at kind of phenomenal rates around the world, but still, internet is still not near as prevalent. 13, not even access to unimproved drinking water. So a little bit different. I think just being able to see the world differently. And how would some of these statistics, just not to make you feel, guilty or like somehow we're, should feel guilty. Seeing some of these things, what should it help us do in our jobs as social workers and as people who work with others? What are the benefits of being able to see the world maybe as bigger and our places in it? What would be some of the benefits for us Any ideas with that?
Be more tolerant of someone that comes in that might be much different than what you might have expected.
Right. And if anything, at least checking those judgments at the door and saying, hey, there may be more to this picture than I'm willing to admit. Yeah.
Also that my way is not the right way, it's just one way.
Yeah, that there are other ways. Yeah.
I think you would see more resources in people rather than your particular way. So your problem solving would be more effective.
Yeah. So you're kind of working together for the solution with another person as opposed to imposing a solution. Yeah, exactly. I want to show you another, this is a video clip about a group of refugees, and it's kind of fitting that we are in the midst of this now. This has to do with the country of Sudan, and one of the largest countries in Africa. And it has to do with the Lost Boys. How many of you heard stories about the Lost Boys? Actually, have been, I think, a couple, I don't know how many, of those Lost Boys who have graduated from OSU, actually, which is kind of, I think, kind of inspiring. But this is just a little clip, about 6 or 7 minutes from their kind of story. But just very briefly, a time of civil war. Sudan's been in a civil war for decades, and it still looks like, even though they became a separate country, South Sudan is actually its own country. There's still a lot of civil strife between tribes, even within South Sudan. So it's not a very peaceful region of the world, even still today. But there was a phenomenon that happened when there was a lot of war in South Sudan that created all these orphans, and a lot of them boys, and this focuses on the boys, that banded together and they made the journey to these refugee camps and other places. And this kind of shows kind of a little bit of the history and just kind of how they then emigrated to the U.S. To kind of relocate here. And so just keep in mind some of the perceptions that you might have of immigrants for one, but just of people who are coming to this country and what those perceptions might be.
The war between North and South, that is Sudan, started in 1983. 2 million people lost their life due to that war, civil war. I left when I was 6.
The Kakuma refugee camp became home to thousands of orphaned young men, known as the Lost Boys of Sudan. They arrived here after walking 1,000 miles through the wilderness of Africa to escape their country's bloody civil war. The Lost Boys had little idea they would spend nearly a decade trapped on the border of their beloved country. In the 1950s, as the British abandoned colonization of northern Africa, they hastily combined 2 separate territories into one Sudan. Religion and oil ignited a civil war, pitting the Arab North against the black Christian and animist South.
After the attack on our villages, we played, children with our parents.
The number was 27,000 young men from 10 to 5 years old.
Forming a line that stretched for miles, the boys set a course across sub-Saharan Africa towards Ethiopia in search of safety. In order to survive, they formed makeshift families to take care of one another. A camp was formed in Ethiopia that provided the boys with 3 years of relative calm. But when the government of Ethiopia toppled in 1991, the Lost Boys were forced to flee once again, this time back through the Sudan towards Kenya. Kakuma refugee camp offered the boys some security, survival food rations, and donated clothing. The United Nations provided them a basic education where they learned math, science, and English.
Lizards, crocodiles, and parrots? Yes.
But once the boys finished the school program, there was little left for them to do with their days in the camp, except wait and hope for a better future. With little hope of finding their parents or families alive, and the impossibility of returning to war-ridden Sudan, the United States agreed to resettle some of the lost boys to America.
Do people go to the river with containers to draw water for themselves or for busing? Want to take busing?
There is something called apartment. I've never met, and I've never seen it.
Shower. How does it look like? Shower.
I've never used electricity, so I imagine it is really very hard for me to do that.
In the United States, we had it's only one way. These things are going to affect us.
This is the plane right over.
The food we got in the plane was not really good as what we used to be eaten in Sierra.
It's butter. You can tell he's surprised too.
It's so or bitter. I just see good people say it's food, but when I try to taste, it's like so much.
Now I cannot tell. Is that meat? Is that milk? Is that ghee? I cannot tell.
Mayonnaise, I think that is. But how would you know, right?
Potatoes. In Africa, you use to cook it, you boil it, okay? Yeah, they make different, they make it in different way. Slice it, they fry it, they put it in the bag, okay? It's really good, yes. Right, it's yours. Everything here has belongs to you. We do not throw things away through the window. We put here, let's push. It's not that right.
It is a food.
These are donuts.
These are colored sprinkles.
Yeah.
You want to try one? Want to taste it?
It look like this.
Getting some looks from local people.
And how does it connect it with the verse of Jesus Christ? Many of us have so many questions to ask, but I think we have few people to answer.
Everything is different. Everything is different. It's kind of irritating because people know you're from Africa. They say, oh, are you from Africa? Yes. Some people they say, like, do you live in the forest? Nobody is born in the forest. You can't live in the forest. You have to live in a house. In the United States, people are not friendly. You can find someone walking in the street by himself, don't even talk, You cannot go to the house of someone who you don't know, though you are all American. Call the police, why this guy come to my house? I don't know him. But in Sudan, they can ask you, have you done those? Are you new to this place? They can ask you. You say, I'm new to this place, they can show you where you are. You can even talk with them. It is important we ask them, how do people work in this area? How do people feel when you ask somebody, now can you show me a way? How do we feel, That's difficult, you cannot even ask it because these are different people. How are we going to be acquainted with this life?
Merchants in Daniel and Panther's neighborhood have filed complaints with the local police in Pittsburgh. They feel intimidated by the boys entering their stores in large numbers. So a meeting was called to advise the boys not to travel in groups.
Do you find everything really new and different here?
Yes.
A lot of, do you have a lot of freedom here that you didn't have? Yeah.
Now I'm getting you. Somebody can bring on the lights again. That would be great. At least, or can everybody see me? That's fine. We can do here. So reactions or reflections for just the short clip that we saw. There's a larger clip. There's actually National Geographic, I think, has this online if you ever want to view the kind of the whole story. And they kind of follow these. And there's actually a 12-year follow-up with the boys who came here from Sudan, which is very fascinating as well. So.
It's also a recent movie, The Good Lie.
Mm-hmm.
It's-
Yeah, is about it as well. So reflections for kind of how it relates to us, and I'm always about how does it affect us, and of what importance would something like this have for us? Yeah.
I really think that the reverse would also be true. If we took 100 people who live in America and took them to Sudan and said, this is going to be better for whatever reason, and we ate mostly rice and, meat was much less prevalent, no electricity, it would be an adjustment in,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of, if our view is, of course, they would want electricity and a shower and convenience food.
Right.
But the reverse is also true. What you see as your ideal is not necessarily the case. The fact that they've graduated from college and have done, I'm sure, far more things, acclimated, going back for them would be very hard. I think that adjustment is important, but remembering that your normal is not necessarily their normal.
Right. And I think that's one of the keys is remembering that what I'm assuming or what I'm kind of placing upon you of what you will like or the freedoms that you would have. They didn't necessarily want to leave Sudan given if they had their family intact, if there was not war, they would want to live, I'm sure, back where you normally grow up with. So it's not that everybody's clamoring to want to get into the United States because they want to have more freedoms and things like that. So I think it's remembering that, yeah, there's a whole bunch more to the story than maybe what I'm thinking and assuming about what they want. Yeah.
Well, I think, obviously, if you're going to a place that's unfamiliar, you want to try to maintain that togetherness. You want to try to maintain that culture, that familiarity. And I think it just kind of speaks to the fact that we put policies and procedures in place to kind of break that away, something that is so communal where they travel in a group.
Yeah.
They're being told to not travel in a group. You
Yeah.
have to travel with one or two people. And that's just the start of breaking down those cultures where people don't feel connected anymore. And they feel that, they have to acclimate to something that's not familiar. And it kind of create other issues within that culture group.
Right.
You start to do that because you no longer have those things to keep you together.
One is extenuating in their circumstance because that's how they survived. They formed these makeshift family groups, to travel these thousands of miles. I mean, who knows what kinds of peril they had to deal with in order to get to these refugee camps. But yeah, then to be told, no, you can't do that anymore.
Well, and how many other high school groups in the same town were told, oh, you can't travel in groups?
Right.
Well, that happens in America with.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, in this example, it's like, it's not fair to say you can't travel in groups just because you're tall and dark-skinned and stick out. And how many other groups were told, oh, sorry, you can't travel in groups because you're small and, nobody, so it's just not fair.
Very much part of racial as well. Other things that you picked up on or noticed in the clip? Yeah.
The assumption that America is a freer country than where they came from. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, it's all a reminder to start from an attitude of curiosity. Like,
that one stuck out to me too. You know, she assumed that they're automatically in a better situation. They may be in a not under threat of violence, but you don't have any idea if they see it as better or not.
Right. Very true. Yeah.
I just love the reaction to the packaged food.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, let's face it, especially if you do get to travel outside the U.S., so many countries do food so much better.
Yes.
I mean, that's my,
Better,
that's my
yeah.
opinion.
Well, I do travel a lot. I mean, my uncle is from Germany, so I travel a lot in Europe, and yeah, love the German food. So I hear comments a lot from Anka about food in the U.S. So yeah. Yeah, and I actually had a chance to travel to South Sudan before I started this job, and to travel about 17 miles up into some of these are very rural communities, very much like the ones that were on the video. And if you've traveled anywhere, particularly in Africa and Latin America as well, the hospitality is just absolutely amazing. I mean, and the communal, the focus on making you feel welcome in a culture like that, just outstanding. I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable. So if you have that chance, do that. Yeah.
There was also another comment I had about it, that I really felt sad that they were not welcomed better and things were explained better. I mean, we kind of laughed about it, about, you know, you don't throw things out of the window. And it is kind of funny from our cultural context, but to some extent, I think a lot of those comments were probably pretty condescending. And so that it would have been nice if there's more introduction, like for any refugees or any people that move to different countries, about the culture and what's normal or not normal, or what, you know, how you would stick out if you do something. And so I just felt like it would be nice to have more.
Well, and to be fair, we don't know we haven't seen all the integration in with this.
But in general,
Yeah.
I felt the same way, and really sad that he felt that Americans were
not friendly.
And I remember when I would be talking with some people that had to come here from Somalia, I thought it was really neat that they tried to explain that they were nomads before the war, and they didn't really need to have a place where you pay rent. And their richness is their children, so.
So prioritizing difference.
You know, they didn't have to worry about so much of how Americans might have to worry to provide for their children because of the way they lived before they had their war.
Right. You know, and my guess is as we become more of globalized in our own, in our world, and how people are traveling and emigrating and immigrating to different countries. As social workers, as any profession, we're going to be working with people, both clients and coworkers, who will come from a different culture and maybe a far-off culture. And I very much like your, get curious. That's actually one of my last slides. Is the curiosity and not feeling, taking the guilt and some of the feeling bad for, and turning that into curiosity is like, well, I can only start where I am. And moving from that point and being curious, and if you engage or relate with someone, be intentional about engaging with them, about learning about other cultures. All right, so we unfortunately are not going to have time to play the one game I had, so we're going to move on because we only have I think 10 minutes. But many of you may have seen this. About 10 minutes. Okay. Many of you have seen this. This is about the iceberg. I kind of relate this to us as people. The iceberg, you can see about 10% from the surface. That's kind of with us. If I meet you for the first time, I'm seeing your external appearance, your features, those kinds of things. Make a lot of assumptions. But what's hidden is what's really important. That's the 90%. And we can only get to that 90% if we're willing not only just to ask questions and get to know other people, but also to reveal some things about ourselves. So to be known and to be known by others, that's kind of one of the goals. 3 things that I have, and Dr. Strehorn said this too. How to confront some personal bias. It's first being self-critical and seeing, I cross my arms this way all the time. What if I, did something a little different? What if I did? That's a simple example, but just being able to look at yourself critically, of what kind of things you may take into a situation that may be affecting how you relate to other people, maybe not necessarily in a good way. once you catch yourself, is changing that behavior. Whether that's acknowledging it to another person, acknowledging it to a group of people, and being able to say, you know what, I'm going to expand this next time. I'm going to do a little bit different in how I talk or the language that I use in these settings. And then sharing your experiences. That's how you integrate these learnings. And like you said, challenging yourself by getting curious. Those are the real important parts of, I think, challenging and interrupting bias and stereotypes is by challenging and being curious. Those are the two things. In order to kind of